crash, I don't care. I'm gonna do it my way. I can make it through this. You can throw the world in my face, but the fear gives me life, and I swear till I die, I'm gonna do it my way. Let me fly through the air. If I crash, I don't care. I'm gonna do it my way. Cause the fear gives me life, and I swear till I die, I'm gonna do it my way.
I'll never forget the songs we used to play. And when I put them on, the feeling never fades out my body. I hope you're thinking of me. There won't be a night, there won't be a place where you don't cross my mind, where I don't see your face in somebody. I hope you're thinking of me. People say we're foolish, people say we're dumb, people say we're caught up in temporary love. We don't know what we're doing, they say we're too young, but they don't know a thing about us. I'll wait forever, that's what we said. 16th of September, lying in my bed. I'll wait forever, it's never too late. Couple thousand miles is just a little space. I'll wait. I'll wait. I'll wait. Couple thousand miles is just a little space. I'll wait. There won't be an end. Can't forget the start. When you're far away, it's like we're not apart. I burn my money just to hear you say you love me. Are you ready?
Welcome back, everybody. Did you all have a good lunch? Yeah? So now I'm going to ask a question, and all of you have to respond. Okay? So, how many of you have used dating apps before? Oh, that's a room full of people with dating app users. Why did I ask this question? Well, our next speaker is a matchmaking researcher. And no, he's not going to find you a date tonight, but he's going to tell you about how in the dating app Breeze, they discovered biases and some discriminatory recommendations, and how the team has looked into identifying the biases and addressing them. So please give a round of applause for the next speaker, Thomas Crul.
Thank you, Priya, for the kind introduction. And thank you all for being here and picking me to guide you through this post-lunch dip. You heard my talk, which is titled Algorithmic Biases Everywhere, especially at Breeze. So what can we do about it? Well, to get everybody up to speed, I want to introduce Breeze to all of you, because not everybody might know it. Breeze, so first I want to answer this question. What exactly is Breeze? Breeze is a dating app. I see that my pictures are not loading. Let me fix that real quick. I think I need... Do you guys have the Wi-Fi password for me? Awesome conference, right? Which... Awesome conference. Exclamation mark?
Look behind you.
Man, I should have tested this before, I guess. Yes. All right. We're back up and running, baby. Anyway, sorry for the short interruption. Breeze is a dating app. We've already organized over 220,000 dates. Currently, we are the third largest dating app in the Netherlands. Now, what makes Breeze special? Because there are a lot of dating apps in this world. Well, we are world's first dating app that organizes offline dates at scale. To do this, our app works a little bit different than the more conventional dating apps, the Tinders of the Bumbles of the world that you probably all are familiar with. So how our concept works is that twice a day you get a limited number of profiles, 7 in the morning, 7 in the evening. The swiping works basically the same. Two people like each other, there's a match. However, once there's a match, there's no chatting whatsoever. You cannot talk to each other. Instead, you fill in a date picker. If you're both available at the same time in the coming weeks, you immediately go on a real-life date at one of our partnered locations. So because of this, our business model works quite a bit different than the more conventional dating apps around, as they mostly earn money from advertisements, but also mainly actually subscriptions and upselling premium features. For us, there are no advertisements, no subscriptions, no microtransactions, none of it. You only pay when you get a match. So once you get a match, you pay €9 up front, or pounds or whatever, depending on where you are, and then you go on a date. So this makes it so that what the user wants from our app, namely going on dates, is exactly aligned with what the business wants, because we only make money when people get matches and go on dates. So this makes it a lot more healthy business model, in my eyes. And on the other side, we have the partnered locations, and they give the first drink on the house for free. By the way, that's included in the €9 price. You get the first drink for free on the date that you have with this person. And they give this for free in exchange for the clientele that we give them. For example, on a quiet Tuesday night, we can fill up an entire bar with first dates. This is where our users are right now. We are active in 17 cities in the Netherlands, 6 in Belgium. Well, you can see the rest. We actually launched in Paris last week, Thursday, and that's going very well, so that's very exciting. So we are actively expanding. Then a little bit more about me, who am I and why I'm giving this talk today. Well, this is me, but larger. I'm a matchmaking researcher at Breeze, which basically means that I work on the entire matchmaking system, so the whole system that decides who gets to see which profiles and how many. So machine learning engineering, data science, data engineering, basically the full stack. I've spent the last 2 years at Breeze, and before that I was still studying computer science and engineering at TU Delft. Oh, and as you can see, I only have one nice shirt. So I can already hear you guys thinking, wow, that sounds like a great dating app that I will definitely download once this talk is over. But why are we here? We aren't just here to hear a guy pitch about a dating app, right? No, you're exactly right. And I just wanted to immediately cut to the chase. I'm standing here because we have an issue. And the issue is as follows. Our algorithm might be portraying discriminatory behavior. Quite a bomb to drop, I know, but I will get all into details today. First, I'd like to outline what I will be talking about today. So first, I want to explain to you how we unearthed this issue, how we found out about it in the first place, then what we have done since to address it, and then finally what we're working on right now, namely how to measure this diversity that people like to talk about, and finally also how we can actually improve it. So with that being said, let's jump right into how we actually unearthed this issue, how we found out about it. Well, it all started with this graph that one of the founders of Breeze, Dan, one of my matchmaking colleagues, he's sitting right there, by the way, showed to me. This is the results of a study conducted by researchers at the Rijksuniversiteit Groningen, looking at the behavior of Europeans on online dating apps. Now, what you can see on this y-axis over here, you can see the ethnicities of said users that participated in the study. And on the x-axis here, you can see what ethnicity they would prefer in potential partners on these dating apps. And you can see two big takeaways, or two big trends from this graph. The main thing is there's a huge bias towards people with a European ethnicity. The bars on the left are huge. And then the second takeaway, a little bit of a smaller effect, but you can see on the diagonal that there's a small same ethnicity bias. Well, you could ask, we're dealing with online dating here. People have preferences, varying preferences in what partner they would like. Who cares? That's inherent to the business, right? That's a very valid point. Aren't people entitled to have their own preferences, especially in the context of online dating? That's true. However, we believe that our system is strengthening these existing biases, which is something that we find problematic. So we wanted to do something about it. But this is quite a bold claim to make. So first of all, how is our system actually making these biases worse? Well, to explain that, you need to know a little bit about the Breeze recommender system and how it actually works. So this is a schematic overview of said Breeze recommender. All right, now that everyone's up to speed, let's get going with the rest of the talk. No, I'm kidding. I'll detail everything as we go along. So in theory, we could show every single user to every other user, right? We could do it. However, there are some hard cuts that we facilitate, namely based on age, height, gender, so basically the sexuality of the user, and also geography. Geography in our context means that you need to be willing to go on a date in the same city, right? Because we're all about real-life dates, so you need to be willing to sit across the actual other person. So then that results in the actual list of possibilities, as we like to call them, or the links between users that we could realistically actually turn into suggestions. And now all of these possibilities we feed into two separate models, a collaborative filtering model and a content-based model. As probably everybody has heard about collaborative filtering, but may have forgotten since they heard about it. I want to give a very quick introduction, very quick crash course on said collaborative filtering. It was popularized by Netflix, and it's also easiest to explain in this context, I feel. Let's say you have two arbitrary users, Alice and Bob, and then we introduce two arbitrary movies as well, movie A and movie B. Doesn't matter who these users are, doesn't matter who these movies are. Then, if both Alice and Bob watch these two movies, this already tells us something about these users, right? You can say that they're in some sense similar because of their taste in movies. Now, let's say we introduce a third movie, movie C, and Bob watches it. Because we know these users are similar, Alice has not watched this movie, but Bob has, which we take as an implicit signal that Bob likes this kind of content, we recommend it to Alice. That's basically the intuition behind collaborative filtering. I say intuition because, in general, it is a black box model, which means I can tell you sort of how it works, but I cannot tell you why, or how it comes to individual predictions. Why does it want to show this user to this user? Why does it say that the like probability is 0.5, not 0.6? I don't know. I know that this is how it works in general, and that it works pretty well. Second is the content-based model. We are using an XGBoost model for this. And this is basically, so this does allow some insight into the predictions using Shep plots and those kind of techniques. And it's based entirely on the user behavior with regards to the information on user profiles. So we basically have all the information on user profiles at our disposal, and also how many times someone liked or disliked certain things. Some example correlations of what this model can find are, for example, users prefer other users that live close by, or it could also be user-specific. So this user, let's say user A, prefers other users that do not smoke over users that do. Now, as with most other content-based or XGBoost models, you have to manually create all these features that we feed into the model, which we do, of course, as well, which I can also say that this model currently does not use pictures in any way. Partly because it's technically quite challenging to do so, and also because it's a morally gray area that we haven't really got a good answer to yet. So then we use these two models to predict the like probability, so the probability that user A will like user B. Then we aggregate those predictions into a match probability per possibility. And then it goes into the very fancy suggestion logic that I put in there, which basically, for all intents and purposes, just sorts descendingly, takes the highest match probabilities and suggests them. Right? This is mainly because it makes sense for our business model, as we only make money when we make matches. So this doesn't necessarily have to hold in general for our dating apps, because they are more interested in keeping users, so retention, but also upselling. So this is really how the Breeze recommender works, not necessarily dating app recommenders in general. All right, now that you know a little bit about the Breeze recommender, let's take this new knowledge and look at the study results again and see what it implies. So this is basically how our reasoning was when unearthing this issue. You have the existing user biases, which are given from the study results that I showed previously. And we have the feeling, I say feeling because we don't actually have data on this, because the GDPR kind of prevents that, but I'll talk about more about that later. We have the feeling that we're quite a homogeneous user base with predominantly people of European ethnicity. We know this because we got user feedback saying that the profiles that they're seeing aren't very diverse. But also, we approve all the new profiles that come onto our platform to make sure there's no explicit content on there, or there are no fake profiles and everything. And I basically sat with these people, do these approvals, then you see like what's going on, and that gives you a sense of the user base as well. So if you combine these two, that we have predominantly European users, and that there's a strong bias towards these European users, you basically come to the conclusion that we have a strongly biased user base, which really likes itself. Right? It's European users that really like European users. So anybody outside of this ethnicity is really hard to get in between. Now, this strongly biased user base generates a lot of bias-like data, of course, which we use to train our recommenders, which will hence also be biased. We use these recommenders to predict what the match probabilities will be for new possibilities, which will also be biased, leading into the biased suggestions that we make. And to make matters worse, there's also a feedback loop there, because we decide what suggestions are made, which also decides what possibilities can actually make it into the training set of the recommender. So that also doesn't help. This results in us having the fear that the profiles of users with a non-European ethnicity are hardly shown to other users at all, which again, we would find problematic, as these people are not getting a fair chance when coming to our platform. So we have a pretty well-defined problem. Let's do something about it, right? Easy. Well, how are we actually going to do that? Well, in essence, we want to level the playing field for our users based on their ethnicity. But is that even allowed? It smells a little bit like positive discrimination, which is discrimination. It was just discrimination and very much illegal. So we wanted to answer this question first. Now, I found this to be a pretty hard question, but I decided to tackle it like I would tackle any software engineering or machine learning problem that I'm faced with on a day-to-day basis. First, of course, by looking up on Stack Overflow. Surprise, surprise, did not find an answer. And the second approach I normally take is to dive into the documentation myself. So I basically went to check what the README for real life has to say about it, which is, of course, the Constitution. Now, I downloaded this PDF. It's a huge document. I'd never looked at it before in my life, which feels kind of weird to say. But anyway, I didn't have to scroll very far, because right at the top, Chapter 1, Article 1, it says, all persons in the Netherlands shall be treated equally in equal circumstances. Now, you could argue that our proposed solution of leveling the playing field does not treat each user equally, as we want, based on their ethnicity, we want to help some users to achieve the level that other users are at, which would then be a case of positive discrimination. Like, it feels like our intents are good, as we want to have an equal and fair situation, which is what our goal is. But to get there, we may need to do some positive discrimination, which, according to the law, is illegal. Now, it may not surprise you, but preferably, we'd rather not get cancelled or be on the receiving end of a discrimination lawsuit. So we wanted to be certain about this, that if we were actually to do something about it, it would not backfire on us. Which is why we turned to the experts on the matter. So, do you guys know who the experts are on this matter? Very silent. I guess that's a no. So it turns out it's the Dutch Human Rights Institute. So we went to the College voor de Recht van de Mens, the Dutch name is, so you don't have to. So in order to get there, it was already quite hard. This is the whole procedure to get an appointment there. So normally they handle complaints. So it's one party that says, or like basically accuses another party of being discriminated against. Then they do a preliminary investigation, then they have the hearing. But for us, we basically sort of accused ourselves of potentially doing discriminating. We want to find out if we could do something like we envisioned. Now, we had to give a lot of information about our recommender system and everything that are already detailed about you. And then we finally got the hearing in April of 2023. This is what it looks like. It's not very impressive or large. It's just a small room in Utrecht that we'd sit. So normally, probably on the right, they have the accusers, and on the left, they have the defendants. Now, for us, there were no defendants. We were the accusers and the defendants in one. So it was just 3 of us sitting on the right with 4 people from the Dutch Human Rights Institute in front of us. And basically, the main question that we asked them during this 2-hour session is, are we allowed to intervene in our platform with the aim of making our platform more fair, even though that would mean that we would treat users unequally? at first, I was a little bit skeptical about, you have these lawyers sitting in front of you. Are they actually going to understand, the technical intricacies and how these biases actually propagate into the recommender system and the algorithms and everything? But I was actually really impressed about their verdict. So I won't keep you waiting very long. What was their verdict, actually? Well, they published the following article in September 2023. I'll translate it from Dutch, but the dating app Breeze can and has to change the algorithm to prevent discrimination. So we basically went there asking, hey, can we do this? And they said, you have to. But fun fact about the Dutch Human Rights Institute is that their verdicts are not legally binding, so for us it doesn't really matter, and we were working on it anyway. But it may be used to hold other organizations accountable in the future, which is a good thing in my mind. So for us, great news. We identified this issue, and we actually have expert approval to work on it, to actually improve on it. Now what? Now we actually have to work on it. So this is basically where the issue split into two. First, how can we measure diversity on our platform and actually get a metric for it, get a grasp of it, what does it mean, how can we improve on it, everything. And then second, once we measure it, how can we actually implement interventions or change something about the platform, the algorithm, the company, whatever, so that we can actually improve on this diversity that we've just defined and measured. So first I will start into measuring diversity on our platform. Now, this is where the GDPR, or in Dutch, the AVG, comes into play, as ethnicity is a special category data, which basically means that processing and using it is heavily regulated and also protected, with the interest of the user in mind. Basically, they said that these category data should not, in general, be used to base predictions or to base decisions on. So to prevent that from happening, we basically prevent the decision makers from actually getting this data. However, now we would like to use it actually to help these users, but we're still not allowed to. So there's like this weird interplay between privacy legislation and actually fairness. However, there are a few exceptions to the GDPR, and the same actually holds for the Dutch AVG. There are a lot more, but I'll only list the ones that are relevant for our use case. So first off, we can gather this data if we have explicit and voluntary consent for the users. Now, voluntary is a key word in this sentence. It needs to be 100% voluntary. There cannot be any consequences to users not wanting to give this or not. We cannot even, give a thank you to the people who do. That would not be voluntary. The second one is that we could use this in anonymized data sets. However, how do you get to anonymized data sets from our users? Because at no point during the pipeline, we also us, so the processors of the data, can know what the ethnicity of an individual is, which is pretty hard to achieve. Now, given these boundaries, these legal boundaries, and also these exceptions, we considered the following setup for audits. We had 4 options. So first, just using the first exception to the GDPR, and just directly asking users to self-identify. Second, we could introduce fake profiles, where we know what the ethnicity is, and then see how it's treated by the users, how much it's liked, and those kind of things. Third, we could one-up on these fake profiles and actually introduce fake users that we pay to use the platform that will be willing to share ethnicity for us, and then we can, track their performance metrics and see how they do compare to each other, split their ethnicity. And then finally, it would be still to try to find a way to anonymize existing data while adhering to privacy legislation. Now, all of these setups come with their own drawbacks. First off, for the self-identification audit, which would probably be the easiest one, there's a pretty big selection bias, as there needs to be an option for people to say, prefer not to say, I don't want to share this. I cannot imagine that 100% of our users will be willing to share that ethnicity with us. So that will always give some sense of, or some uncertainty in this bias. And moreover, our whole idea is that ethnicity shouldn't matter in online dating, while when asking users like, hey, what's your ethnicity, we're a dating app, we want to use it, we basically give the impression that it is important, which is exactly the opposite of what we want. Now, secondly, introducing fake profiles also introduces our own biases in creating these profiles, which would be problematic. And on top of that, it's also kind of unethical to show fake profiles to users and maybe give them the impression they could actually go on a date with them. And also, it gives no insight into the demographics of the user base. So we would know how different ethnicities are treated, but we wouldn't know whether 90% of our users are European or 80 or whatever. It does not give any information on that. Thirdly, paying agents, it's already in the name, it's expensive, takes a lot of time and effort to coordinate all of this, and again, also does not give any insights into the demographics. And then finally, anonymize existing data, as I said before, is quite a challenging thing to do or to achieve good levels of anonymity during this whole pipeline, and actually required a novel approach. But we did end up going for this final approach with, as I said, a quite novel approach to doing this audit, which I'd like to share with you right now. So a little bit of the elephant in the room in this whole talk is that we have at least 3 pictures of every single user, right? And now ethnicity is a lot more than looks, or just what you can see on a picture, but it certainly does matter, I think, especially given the fact that our users only have pictures to base their decisions on whether to like or dislike a profile. So what we do with the pictures is that we cut out just a part of the picture, of the skin on the picture, and then we save that with anonymized metrics. So what we, for example, care about is how many times a user is proposed to other users, or how many times we show a user to other users. As we cannot control what people will accept or who they will be willing to go on a date with, who they want to match with. That's completely within their responsibility, and they are completely, that's their thing. However, what we do control is what we show to them. And that's something we would want to be at least conform with the demographics of the user base at large. What I mean by that is that, let's say we have 90% European users on our platform. Of all the suggestions that we make, also 90% should be of European users, of profiles of European users, while we fear that that would not, right now, would be like 95% or something. So no matter your ethnicity, you should be shown an equal amount on average to other users. So we saved this proposal counter, how many times you show to other users, binned, so to make it anonymous, so between 50 and 100 and 150 to throw a lot of users on the same pile. And then we make the step to actually classify this picture cutout, which are anonymous, as we basically just boil it down to a single color code, which is not retraceable to users as far as we're aware, and experts also think the same. So then we actually classify this color code into a skin tone. For this, we use the Monk skin tone skill. It was developed by Google, I think, a few years ago. And initially, it was built for computer vision applications. You probably all know the story of facial recognition software working very poorly for people of color. And this was basically, this Monk skin tone skill contains 10 classes that you can see on the screen of skin tones that are made to be as inclusive of the whole wide range of skin tones that we have in the human race as possible. So we use this to classify all these picture cutouts or these color codes into this skin tone skill, and that results in a data set per skin tone, where we see exactly how many users do we have of a class and how many times are they proposed on average, for example. Now, this is still in active development. We ran an MVP or like a proof of concept, and it does seem to work. By the way, Google does not recommend you to do this. They say that all classifications into the Monk skin tone skill must be done by a human. However, we deemed that not to be feasible at our scale, so we're basically trying to do it algorithmically. But in doing that, we of course need very good quality control, and we need to be very sure that this classification algorithm actually works. And I can get into detail maybe more later if I have the time, but I basically tried to design this whole pipeline or this skin tone classifier to be as dumb as possible, to not to introduce any more layers of machine learning that could also have more biases, etc. So basically, we're almost finished with this audit to actually get information on this current state of diversity on our platform. So, yay, sounds like a great audit. We almost solved the problem of how to measure diversity. Then what? What are we going to do with all this data? Well, let's start thinking one step ahead. Let's assume that we figured out how to actually do this audit and how to do it decently reliable and repeatable. Then you can think of something along the following lines. You do the audit, you get some measures, some metrics on diversity, you do an intervention, could be anything. You do the audit again, see if it improved. Maybe we could do this even in A/B test formats, which would be even better. However, this leaves the question as to what this thing in the middle should be, right? What intervention should we implement? Now, with initially thinking about this and brainstorming about this, we weren't very comfortable with it, as we didn't have a lot of confidence in ourselves to actually come up with the right solutions to this, mostly because we feared that we had a lot of blind spots in this area. As back then, the matchmaking team was only 2 people, which were both white men, which didn't help. Since then, we have grown to 3, so now we are 3 white men. So we're not really winning any diversity awards in the team right now. But to remedy this fact, we decided to ask 50 experts. Just get a diverse group of people to think about this issue, think about possible solutions. So we organized an event which we called A Date with AI Ethics, and got a diverse group of people to come to our office and think about this with us. Now, this was an incredibly valuable experience, I think. These are some of the main takeaways of this event. So first off, this is a great way to get input from a diverse group of people, especially if you lack diversity within your team, which was the case for us. And secondly, this was a huge eye-opener for me personally, as initially I was tackling this issue like just like an algorithmic issue, right? Because I'm an engineer, is my background. I'll just think like, oh, I'll change some parameters, I'll add some weights, I'll maybe do some re-ranking, whatever, change the cost function. It's all going to be solved. We solved discrimination. Yay, on to the next. Probably not to your surprise, that's not how it works. It turns out it's way more ingrained in the whole company, the whole product, the whole service that we provide. One example is that we had a participant of Islamic background, and this company was founded not too long ago, 4 to 5 years ago, by 7 students from Delft, and we use a lot of icons of wine glasses or bottles of beer to indicate that you're going to have the first drink on the date. You go to a bar, have an alcoholic beverage. Well, in Islamic cultures, alcohol is not tolerated, right? That's not the thing that's okay. And we never thought about this because it's just not our background. And these small changes in design, or maybe the languages that we provide the app in, already are very important in deciding who actually signs up for the app or actually joins, and those kind of things, which were things that we really just did not think about before, as it wasn't our frame of reference. And then finally, I think it's very valuable for you if you're interested in tackling algorithmic bias, do this yourself. I organized it with Dutch AI Ethics Community, which is a great community in of itself, and Ethical Data Science Association, which are 2 Dutch-based communities, and they are great partners for the event, and they basically got all of the participants on board, which was great. So that basically concludes the main topics that I wanted to cover. So I wanted to list some key takeaways for you to take home with you and maybe take to your own organizations. So basically, the judgment from the Dutch Institute of Human Rights, so as I already explained, they judge that measures aimed at compensating for or preventing discriminative biases on ethnicity are allowed. So basically, if you want to do the same, you have certainty that you can actually implement it and not get into trouble. You don't have to go to the Human Rights Institute yourself. Again, you can just use our judgment to base it on. Second, the GDPR really complicates diversity audits and improving on this issue, but compliant workarounds do exist, and if you can get creative with it, you can find some solutions to this issue. And then finally, on the event, getting input from a diverse group of people is super valuable and actually not that hard. Just one evening, get everybody together, give them some Pokeballs, that's it. And also, in my eyes, there's really no way that a computer scientists will be able to solve algorithmic fairness on their own. As I initially said, I really thought it was an algorithm issue and it would be very easy to solve, but that has not been proven the case. And I wanted to end on a more personal note, as I've been working on algorithmic fairness and this diversity issue we've had in Breeze for the last 1.5 years or something. And I found that it is very hard and also quite scary, because you have all the council coach and everything, and also standing here and talking about it, you're always very scary of saying the wrong thing or misinterpreting things or not knowing everything or all the fine-grained issues of it. But still, I do think it to be crucial for a fair and equitable world. And also, the people working on it are very nice. So it's a very nice community to get into, actually. So with that being said, thank you for listening. And now I would like to open the floor for a Q&A.
Thank you. That was a great talk. I'm curious, do you have anything you can share about positive interventions you took or any improvements to that graph you first show us after making interventions in your system?
So we've mostly up until now been focused on actually measuring it first, especially because it's really hard to design these interventions as you really don't know what is going to happen, especially if you're not able to measure anything. So we really wanted to be sure to actually measure it first, because there's also a lot of, I don't have it in the top of my head, but there's a lot of stories about people trying to improve the UI while actually making it worse, which is not something that we wanted. So we've really been waiting to actually get the audit up and running and get certainty on that we would be improving things before actually taking measures.
Hi, thank you. It was a really enlightening talk and really clearly presented, I think. I was wondering, so you mentioned, of course, that this scale is like a reduction of the real complexity of human life, and this is, of course, the kind of stuff that you have to do when you want to measure stuff. And I was wondering if you have thought about the intersectionality of different things, because you mentioned different sexualities, you mentioned different, so of course skin tone is only one sort of part, I think, of diversity and of different groups being disadvantaged. So do you have any thoughts about this, about how this intersects with other groups and other characteristics?
Definitely. I think implicit in this whole thing is that we are simplifying diversity only to ethnic diversity, which basically was because, well, ideally I would want to solve diversity in general, just the whole wide range of things, but that already ethnic diversity is already really hard, so we cannot tackle it all. But there's definitely a lot of important issues that are also not tackled. But it's also, the dating space is pretty interesting because some factors we find it perfectly okay to discriminate on. I mentioned that we have height filters in the app, which if you just look at it theoretically, that's a clear-cut case of discrimination, right? And also discrimination on an attribute that an individual can do nothing about. Right? You cannot change your height, but just in the dating space, everybody's fine with it. So there's like a lot of intricacies with this, and there's not really consensus about what attributes are okay to really, like what are okay to filter on and what aren't. And for like ethnicity, we thought it would be a good start because at least for us, the people we've talked to, is that it's nobody wants it to be, or feels like it's good, feels like there are good reasons for it to play a big role in dating. So that's why.
Hey, thank you for the talk. I thought it was very interesting. What I was wondering, if ever in the committees you had, like the ethics committees, it ever came up that, I mean, you can't really act upon what you are not measuring or storing about users. So did it ever come up, the discussion that you do want to store more, like very personal information about customers? And I understand you would never put that in a model or whatever, but you still maybe want to, in a way, store it so that you can check your actual biases. Yeah.
So ideally, I think yes, but this also comes into the GDPR and the ways that you're actually allowed to process this data. So for this, we would actually need explicit preference or explicit consent of all of our users, which we haven't been comfortable enough with asking this about our users, as probably they're going to be like, oh, this dating app wants to know my ethnicity, what the hell is this, right? We can explain all that we want, but users are generally just not reading all of that. So for now, we've thought about it, but shied away from it, or have been scared to actually do it. As again, it really focuses or really gives the impression to all of our users that it does matter, while we don't want it to.
Hey, great talk. Oh, this sounds weird. Maybe it's not the focus of the talk, but I wanted to ask it anyway, about the computer vision part.
Yeah.
How did you determine what part you could use, and that was for certain skin tone? And furthermore, how did you make sure to filter, let's say, disco lights or club lights or anything else that might change the skin tone on the picture?
So for right now, we only used facial recognition, as that's like the easiest way to actually know. Like, where there are certainly like skin there, but there's also like a lot of facial hair and facial features and everything. So basically, the only ML that's in the pipeline is to just get the face, get the bounding box of the face, and then the rest is just image processing. So color values, there are some benchmarks online where you can say, like, I think HSL values, which are like a different kind of than to store an image than RGB. They are very good at just really bounding on like these values until these values will be considered a even skin tone. We'll just mask it, get I think the average of the 5 most common colors, that kind of stuff, to also take some bias out of there. And that's basically how we do that pipeline. But then also what's actually interesting about the audit is that, so at no point in the pipeline can we know what the skin tone of an individual is, but in the beginning we have to do the anonymizing, right? We have to bin all the features. But then if a whole bin of users, so let's say all the users that were proposed between 100 and 150 times, if they were all classified with the same skin tone, we would know the skin tone of all these users, right? So because of that, we introduce some randomness in there. So basically, I think what we do is we take the smallest group of people within these batches that we create to make it anonymous. And then we basically take a randomness factor, so basic probability of 1 divided by this smallest group, and just classify it randomly to never know for certain what the skin tone of an individual will be. So there are a lot more different design choices in this audit, which when we finally sort it out, we would want to make this public.
Thank you.
Of course.
Can I? Okay. Here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you for your talk. I really loved it. I have a question. I remember I read an article that one of the problems with dating apps is that like 80% of matches, or 80% of women match with 10% of the guys on dating apps, or some number like that. So my question is that, did you look into that? And could the problem that you are dealing with respect to ethnicity be part of a bigger problem? Like
so basically referring to the
sub-problem, yeah.
Yeah, basically referring to the popularity bias within these groups. I haven't thought about this yet, but also, so I would say it's pretty for certain that the data that we have is biased. So I would argue that it's more important than to say how we act on this data, to have this, like how we act on how we decide which profiles we actually show is more important, as people are just biased in the context of online dating. That's a long story short. Maybe they always will be. Maybe it will change in the future. But for now, we can only control our own actions and not what users think. So basically, we haven't been thinking about what the user behavior will be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Last 2 questions.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks. So you said that you're looking for expansions into other countries. How scalable is the solution? Because what I saw is like the Dutch Institution of Human Rights and the other processes, they were around the Netherlands. Yeah. But I saw that, for example, you are in UK, you just launched in Paris, possibly other cities or other countries, maybe out of the EU as well. Yeah. So will it be scalable?
The solution to tackle diversity?
Yeah, to measure and identify the part that you focused.
So for now, to simplify it, as we only have a judgment from the Dutch Human Rights Institute, we've really just limited ourselves to the Netherlands in this context. But the GDPR is EU-wide. I don't know if it's probably not in the UK, but all of them have roughly the same legislation. So I think if we comply with the GDPR, we probably are compliant in other countries. So I would say this would work pretty well. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Hey, thank you. I had a bit of a question, because I'm seeing collaborative filtering and then the content-based. Yeah. These are 2 like AI algorithms, so with the AI Act coming around, do you plan on tackling the issue one at a time, or is this like a full pipeline kind of thing? And how do you see the AI Act coming around in 2030?
So this is like on the intervention side, right? How we would...
Yeah, and even like in the sense of an audit, like if tomorrow an external auditor were to come around, how would you show that this actually does not bias or there's no discrimination behind if it were to be put into like the AI Act tomorrow?
I don't know if we would be able to show that our algorithms aren't biased as we will never be able to know what the ethnicity is of individual users if we use this audit setup. So again, I think right now the idea is to just accept that our system is biased, or at least how we get to these predictions, but then using these predictions, knowing that they are biased, and changing how we use them to actually, get this metric that we are interested in equalizing, basically giving everybody a fair chance by showing them an equal number of amounts on average, split per ethnicity, getting this, basically flattening this out across all these skin tones for now. So that will probably, I wouldn't start with, changing the algorithm, everything, as I think that will be really hard, especially not knowing the ground truth. So I would actually, as I said, it's very much more ingrained in the whole product and the whole company, so we could change it like marketing maybe to appear to a wider audience. We could change the product and add some new features. I think that's actually where I would start, and not at the algorithm actually.
For more questions about ethics and data and computers in general, reach out to Thomas in the break. And thank you so much, Thomas. We have something for you from PyData.
Thank you. So in between, one of the co-founders of Breeze, Dan, is also here. If you recognize us anywhere walking around, please don't hesitate to come up to us. I would actually want to share one reading recommendation. Most of my knowledge on fair AI and everything is from this book. It's from the fairmlbook.org. It's completely free. I have the physical copy, but you don't have to buy it. It's completely free. So if you're interested in this, please do look it up. I have no affiliations with this, but it's just a very nice resource for all of this. Thank you.